This is What You Can Do About Taking Control of Your Own Health, a podcast for people interested in learning how to create bodies that are healthy, strong, fit, and disease resistant. I'm Sean McClendon. I am a certified personal trainer. I am an author and a health and fitness enthusiast, as I like to call myself. Thank you for joining me today. Hopefully, somebody's out there doing yard work, so hopefully it doesn't interfere too significantly with the audio for this episode. But I guess we'll see, right? But anyhow, before we get into this episode, my featured book for this episode is my book titled 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health. So you can have the best exercise routine in the world, but if your diet is off, one thing's guaranteed: you will not see results. So in my book, 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health, I've created an easy to follow set of eating habits for you to adopt over 8 weeks to boost your health, which is the most important thing, promote fat loss, and get the most out of your exercise regimen. So when you finish this workbook, you will finally know how to eat to get results. Make sure you look in the description below this podcast episode to get your copy of my fat loss workbook, 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health. All right. This information in this podcast is based on personal research and opinion, and is not meant to be a substitute for advice from a doctor or a physician. You are advised to consult your doctor or physician before making any changes to your lifestyle. Okay, so I just want to record a quick podcast episode on my recent experience doing a 1-day fast. And when I just say fast, when I'm not saying like a juice fast or whatever, I'm talking about a fast in the traditional sense, meaning all you consume is water. No food, no solid food, no liquid food, nothing with any sort of caloric content whatsoever, just water. And if anything different, then maybe like black coffee or, like unsweetened, like herbal tea, that type of thing. So fasting where water only fasting is not something that's new to me. I've done it many times. Not necessarily recently for 24 hours, but I mean, except for like this a couple of days ago. And the reason why I want to share my experience, even though water only fasting is not something new to me, is because I want to, kind of like give my experience for those of you for whom that is not a experience of yours. And perhaps you've been thinking about it, kind of wondering about it, having trepidation about it because you kind of feel like you can't do without food. That's why I want to share my experience. Now, again, before I get into this though, I do want to remind you, for some people, fasting with like doing water only might be something you need to really think carefully about, because of the fact that, especially if you're dealing with conditions like diabetes, you deal with hypoglycemia, which is related, kind of related to diabetes type of issues, and other issues. It could be risky. So either way, just like I said in my disclaimer, make sure you check with your doctor and whatnot, before you go into anything like this. So I'm telling you that, be wise, use wisdom. Now, first of all, why did I embark on a water only fast recently? So, fasting is something, like I said, I have experience with. Even back when I was a teenager, sometimes my church would do fasts, and I would join along with my parents and do the fast. And usually whenever a fast was called on, especially back in the day, it was like water only. It wasn't like these meat on, omit meat only, or no meat, no bread, no sweets. It wasn't anything like that. I didn't hear about that until I was getting closer to college age. So fasting is something that I definitely have experience with, and something that I am a quote believer in the sense of fasting is an experience. It's an experience that really does kind of reach into your core, so to speak. And now, obviously, from just the omitting food standpoint, it's a challenge. it challenges you because it challenges your cravings, for food in general, as well as your cravings for unhealthy food, for sugary stuff, for salty stuff, and so on and so forth. It challenges your cravings for food in general because everything in you kind of learn that you feel like you need food all the time, but then fasting helps you to understand that you don't really need food all the time. As a matter of fact, it shows you that you can go a while without food, and then the things that you feel that feel like hunger aren't necessarily hunger per se. It's more so like craving. It's like we've learned, as I talked about in the previous episode, we've kind of learned to eat frequently based on our societal construct, based on industrial revolution type stuff that has us thinking we need to eat at least three times a day. But it's not true. And if you think about it, think about the way that the body stores up energy in the form of fat. Now, that's one of the many great functions of fat, to kind of store aside some energy for a time of, like, maybe whenever you can't find food. Because contrary to how things are now, back in the day, it wasn't always guaranteed that you were going to have a meal every day. Because you had to work for it a lot more. You had to grow it. You had to hunt it. And now we have supermarkets and whatnot that make food accessible all the time. But our bodies aren't necessarily adapted to food all the time. They're adapted to having food, whenever you can get it, and being able to have fat stored aside so that whenever you had periods of scarcity, whenever food wasn't very available, you had energy to draw from, and that's even really the way that a lot of the animal kingdom kind of still lives, especially if you're talking about, like, the animals that have to hunt, but yeah, but that's kind of like how we have developed, like how we are developed biologically, physiologically, to endure periods of not having as much by being able to pull on our fat stores. But the way that we approach food these days is food is involved in everything that we do. Matter of fact, a lot of times if we celebrate something, food is going to be involved. It's like we can't celebrate without food. We've become very dependent on food for everything we eat, emotionally and all this type of stuff. And life really revolves around food rather than food serving us in our lives, if you kind of get what I'm saying. So fasting really challenges that, and it helps you to realize, kind of like the Bible says, that man doesn't live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Like, it helps you to understand, like, I don't just live to eat. It's like they say, I eat to live. I eat to kind of help to enhance the life that God has given me. So that's one of the reasons I like fasting, because it kind of helps you to kind of get back to those basic kind of fundamentals, so to speak, of life. It helps to break your cravings, based on everything I just said. Especially if you have cravings to junk food and sugary stuff, fasting will help you to break those. And I know that from experience. It helped me to break a Coca-Cola addiction many years ago. And which I'll probably talk about that in a future episode. So fasting helps in those ways. It helps you to kind of be more akin to, like, your spiritual side. And it helps you to feel better too. You feel cleaner. You feel like you're kind of running, like you're a little bit more aware of yourself. You feel like you are able to just operate better. And sometimes it's not so tangible, but you feel different, and a lot of times we're so used to eating all the time, we kind of get numb to our environment. We don't really understand so much our body signals very much anymore, and we're just kind of going through the motions. But like whenever you fast occasionally, it kind of helps you to back up a little bit and kind of be more aware of like what's really going on inside of you, and helps you to kind of understand your attachments to food and so on and so forth. So anyway, enough of that. So my recent experience with fasting, 24 hours. So sure enough, as always, as this is what happens every time I'm about to fast. Several days out, I decide, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fast. And I'm excited. I know that it's going to benefit me physically. It's going to benefit me spiritually, mentally, all that kind of stuff. 2 days prior, 2 days to a day prior, the excuses start to run through my mind. And if I'm not careful, then I actually go ahead and give in to one of those excuses, and then just kind of call the fast off, or like reduce the duration of the fast. The excuses for me tend to be like, oh, well, I'm doing this such and such with my family, so it's just not a good time. Or, I don't know. If I might have a significant withdrawal headache from caffeine or something like that, from coffee, because I do drink a cup of coffee a day, or different things like that. I don't know. It'd be sometimes the most random stuff. But those are the times where I have to be honest with myself. I don't always succeed at that. I have to be honest. But I make excuses, and it'll be random stuff, and sometimes I back out. So that happened this time too. I was like, but I solidified within myself, I'm doing it, period. I'm just doing it. And I actually did a fast from 12 p.m. on one day to 12 p.m. the next day. That's how I did it this time. So I will say that actually kind of improves the ease of it, because it includes the nighttime fasting. Versus starting a fast on one day and then kind of ending that evening, and then eating the next day. That's actually longer than a 24-hour fast if you think about it. So it's a little easier, to be honest, when it incorporates those nighttime hours where you're going to be fasting anyway. So anyhow, the day of, I had eaten breakfast, probably about 10, 11 o'clock. And so, so the fast started at 12. Of course, the first maybe 3 hours or so, I just wasn't hungry anyway. And so I started to get hungry. But I was more so okay. And the thing is, having kids, and my wife wasn't doing it with me. This is something I decided to do on my own. But anyhow, I helped cook dinner, a little bit of a challenge. But you just kind of get in the mode, and kind of focus on cleaning up and different things like that. And I also did, want to spend some time in kind of like reflection and prayer and whatnot, kind of away, which I did that evening of the day that I officially fasted. But I made it, got to bed, felt pretty hungry, but by the time I was, in bed, I got tired, and so my mind wasn't really on food much anyway. But the hunger pangs weren't really that bad. Waking up in the morning of the fast, I felt kind of empty, which is what usually happens. It's like your stomach feels empty, and you just kind of feel overall like this kind of like feeling. I didn't feel weak. A little sad. Again, I had to cook breakfast for my kids, and and it seemed like the breakfast that I cooked was like cooked perfectly. I think I cooked some grits, eggs, and it's like I feel like I probably made great grits that morning. And so, you're a little sad, One thing I sometimes have to remember is to drink water, because sometimes I kind of forget to. But so I try to make sure I did that. I could have done better with that, if I'm honest. But I felt empty. But I also kind of felt, if you can understand what I'm saying, like I felt a little bit more focused, in the sense of whatever it was that I was working on or doing, I was more, maybe a little more intentional about it, because I wasn't eating, you know what I mean? So it's like I was, maybe more able to kind of focus on that thing. And I won't lie, I was anticipating eating after my fast ended at 12. So yeah, so aside from that, aside from feeling empty and whatnot, it was okay. And then by the time 12 rolled around, I actually didn't eat right at 12. I actually ended up eating more like closer to 1 because of just circumstances and whatnot. And I broke my fast by getting like I think a banana. I think I got a couple of crackers um that we had here at the house. Didn't necessarily need those, but that's how I broke my fast. And I was good. And then about 1:30, I got a more substantive meal, which was like a sandwich or something like that, like a turkey sandwich. But anyhow, I broke my fast and I was good. I never felt jittery. I never felt like I said, overly weak or anything like that. I kind of more so felt normal. But it's that empty feeling that it happened after maybe about, I'm guessing, about 12 or so hours of fasting. I will say this. I believe that if my diet was worse, which my diet is not 100% where I want it to be, but it's okay. But if I had a more like bad diet, then I probably would have felt more jittery and whatnot. Because usually when you're jittery, it has to do with like your blood sugar and whatnot. But I'm kind of used to those type of things also because I do practice intermittent fasting, where I generally eat between the hours of 10 and 8. So what is that? A 10-hour eating window. So that's 10-hour eating window, and then 14 hours of eating of an eating window. But keep in mind, no. Yeah, 14 hours of not eating, and that 14 hours of not eating includes sleep time, which is about 7 to 8 hours. So that already kind of helps me, though. That and a diet that's generally okay kind of helps me to not have like the jitters and whatnot so quickly. I will say in the past I have done like, I think the most days of water only fast I've done is 3. Like back in 2012, my wife and I did a water only fast. And that was an experience. That was something, and I plan on doing that here probably within the next few months. But that was an experience for sure. And I actually got kind of lightheaded and whatnot from that experience because your blood pressure goes way down, and so if you make any sudden movements, you can kind of get a little like a little woozy or whatever. That also is one of the reasons why I water only fasted. And why I intend to do that on a fairly regular basis now. For 24 hours is what I mean, because I already do intermittent fasting. I just plan on doing that water only fasting for 24 hours more frequently because I want to get used to that. And also because the health benefits of it. There are health benefits, and I want you to look up the word hormesis. I actually wrote a short article about it, which I try to link to in my show notes on my website, SeanMcClendon.com. But basically the whole premise of that is when you subject your body to minor stresses here and there, it helps your body your body has mechanisms on the inside of it that will activate when you do that. So whether it be exposed, like, going without eating for some period of time, exposing yourself to hotter than normal or colder than normal temperatures, strength training, in other words, like lifting weights and stuff like that, or interval training, where you kind of like do harder than usual kind of like cardio exercise, but not too much, not to the point where you break your body down, but more so to the point of where you give your body higher than normal stress. Your body has mechanisms that will activate in that moment, and then, it will be like, okay, this is a little bit more than we expected, so we're going to actually improve to meet this stress better. And these stressors actually improve your body and they can result in improved overall health. Perhaps even longevity, activating like longevity pathways and whatnot in the body. Very impressive. But when you think about it, it makes sense. We already knew this with like strength training and whatnot. But it's like, I think that science is really, really becoming a lot more aware of it. Fasting is an example of hormesis. But anyhow, I'll talk about that, and I'll link to my article on that in the show notes. Hopefully I remember to do that. So anyway, this has been a long enough episode here. Hopefully, if you're kind of on the fence on doing a water fast, you'll consider it. Just make sure, especially if you have a condition, but just even in general, that you actually, talk to your doctor, physician, do your homework, use wisdom and all that kind of stuff, because there are, potential health things to be aware of, especially if it's not something that you do. Because you got to use wisdom, y'all. But remember, this is all about taking care of your health. You don't need food all the time. That's just like a societal norm, period. It just is. It just is. It just is. I was about to go on a soapbox there, but I'll just save that maybe for another episode. Anyhow, remember to get your copy of my book, 8 Weeks to Transform Your Diet and Your Health, down in the description. Read my article that I plan on linking to down in the description. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, like and share this episode. And always remember, your doctor's not responsible for your health. You are. God bless you.